I think it was interesting that the century began well for human rights. In September 2000 you had the Millennium Declaration, which talked about the right to development, talked about the need to address issues of tackling poverty, and to do it in a way that I was very happy about. The Millennium Development Goals lost some of that human rights framing and became sort of goals that became matters almost of numbers and statistics, and didn't take into account governance issues, and there were serious gaps, like for example the lack of reference to sexual and reproductive health and rights, and the lack of targeting those most vulnerable, those most excluded, as a matter of human rights, and taking a rights-based approach. But the real issue that caused such problem was in fact the response to the attacks of 9/11, the war on terrorism, the skewing of human rights as being less important, whether they were civil and political or economic, social and cultural, and the way in which that became a language of terrorism. Even political opponents were being called terrorist. There was a repression of all of the freedoms, freedom of the press, freedom of association, and also much less attention to the addressing of poverty. Nonetheless, the Millennium Development Goals served a purpose of being collective global goals, but it was difficult to get back to the full agenda of the Millennium Declaration. I think over the last 20 years, since Vienna, there has been more attention to economic, social and cultural rights, not least the Centre for Economic and Social Rights also marking its 20th anniversary. I realised when I finished my term as High Commissioner for Human Rights the need to put more emphasis on economic and social rights, and I founded Realising Rights, not as an organisation that would last forever, but over a 5-year period. I thought initially, it took 8 years. We really tried to address, in the context of the continent of Africa, the importance of rights to food, safe water, health, education, shelter, and to tackle issues of women, peace and security by empowering women, having them at the table, as Security Council Resolution 1325 provides, tackling health issues, working both with government and holding government to account. And I learned that promoting economic, social and cultural rights has to be done differently by civil society organisations than the traditional way of advancing civil and political rights, which was significantly naming and shaming, holding to account by showing up the failures of government. Whereas on the economic and social side, you've got to work with health ministries that are understaffed, under-equipped, and try to help them in their relationship even with their own Minister of Finance to focus on the need for more budget for health so that the government can do better on realising the right to health. And I think these were very good ways of learning how to ensure that economic and social rights are pursued actively by civil society as well as being a responsibility of government. The concept of the indivisibility of human rights, of all human rights, economic, social and cultural, civil and political, was an extraordinarily important part of the Vienna Declaration and Programme. And it's very important that we keep that link. Interestingly, when I ask a woman at grassroots, what does human rights mean to you? And I ask the question quite often, it's usually an answer that it's about freedom from violence and access to water. And that actually spans the indivisibility. And these are the realities. And if you talk to people in their local village, they don't distinguish. It's a protection issue and it's an access issue. A protection from violence, a protection from the effects of warlords, the effects of bullying. I see it now in my work as UN envoy in the Great Lakes region, the way in which it's that total deprivation of poverty combined with the violence, the gun, the raping around the corner.